This game has the potential to be the next great title in the subgenre of large-scale milsims to join the ranks of games like Squad and Arma. Say hello to Bellum, the title of which is the Latin word for war, currently being developed by the studio Astarte, led quite prominently by the YouTuber Karmakut, who's well known for his content focused on authentic and realistic milsim gaming. So full disclosure, I was given early access to Bellum's first devblog to cover it in this video, take that as you will. Obviously, we still know very little about this game, so what leads me to have such an optimistic outlook on Bellum? That's the question I'll answer here today, where I'll cover what we know about the game so far, what we've seen, and the underlying philosophy driving this game's development that I think is what sets it apart from other titles. Let's start with the game's first ever devblog just released today, showcasing Bellum's current pre-alpha foundational features. First, the movement. It's very clear that the movement system we're going to have in Bellum is not going to be the standard walk, sprint, stand, crouch, prone step system typical in legacy shooters. Instead, it will have a more state-of-the-art incremental control scheme like there is in Arma Reforger or Escape from Tarkov, allowing for greater flexibility in player control with tools like the scroll wheel. How the prone stance works is also unique, kind of reminiscent of the system we saw in Battlefield 5, changing the body's position more naturally depending on the direction faced, instead of simply helicopter spinning the player. Second, the gunplay. Visually, the gunplay is going to feature proper shouldering of the rifle and not have floating stock syndrome. Recoil is going to be a relevant mechanic, otherwise it looks like a pretty typical tactical shooter experience, and we'll have to wait to see how it all comes together with things like the weapon sounds and sway. I will note a specific clip here wherein an M249 saw is shown being braced against the ground to conduct a reload. This is fantastic attention to detail that in my personal experience with Korean K3 light machine guns, which are very similar, more accurately reflects the ergonomics of reloading a belt fed. It's also worth noting that crew-served weapons in this game will be actually crew-served. We've yet to see how it will play out, but the fact that this is a design goal is already a major indication that the game is committed to realism above all else. Third, the medical system. It looks like the system used in Bellum is going to be very reminiscent of what we see in Arma 3 KC Liberation, much more grounded in reality than the systems we might see in Squad, for example. That is where everyone has access to self-embodied supplies like bandages and tourniquets, which are used to stop bleeding on specific parts of the body. More specialized medics can use additional tools like drugs and blood bags to further sustain a player's life and manage varying levels of incapacitation, including unconsciousness. Interestingly, the devblog notes that the medical system will likely be enhanced as time goes on and the player base's knowledge base grows, so the gameplay definitely leans more towards realism than arcade and might even start implementing more of the full gamut of tools used in real-world situations like chest seals, nasopharyngeal airway kits, and maybe different types of wounds like burns. Fourth, the body armor. Personal body armor is striven to be accurately modeled by the team. The plates will protect only where they cover against rounds that they are rated to stop. It sounds super basic, but it's amazing how few games can portray even this correctly. So it's good to see this level of attention to detail. In terms of gameplay implications, this will not only add an additional level of skill in shot placement, but it will create an inherent element of asymmetry between well-equipped conventional forces and less well-equipped irregular forces, which I expect will enhance the gameplay. Fifth, we have the UI, and this is my favorite part of the devblog so far. So to momentarily jump to a different game, Arma Reforger, one of my favorite parts is how much of the UI is tied to the physical world around you. To interact with stuff, you need to actually interact with those items rather than an abstracted set of buttons floating in your screen. It's a very immersive level of physicality even in this virtual world. Minimal HUD is a hallmark of tactical shooters, and Bellum builds upon this standard by incorporating traditional HUD elements like a map, tactical markers, and a compass with in-universe items like a chest-mounted ATAC system or a smartwatch. Electronic warfare and drones will make an appearance later on, which means that all of these systems will be tied together through these in-universe tools, with potential gameplay implications for denying the use of these enablers, for example. It's a diegetic way of using the same thing that a lot of Arma 3 mods do for realism, while maintaining a minimal HUD with room for further expansion and connection to other aspects of gameplay. To me, the potentials are endless, and I applaud the dev team for going this route. Sixth, teamwork systems. Bellum is going to be like Squad or Arma in that it will emphasize platoon-level operations where players are primarily maneuvering as squad-sized elements under the command of a platoon HQ. However, player roles in this game are going to be slotted into a fixed table of organization and equipment as we see in KC Liberation or titles like Insurgency, and won't follow the squad model of players picking whatever kits they please and organizing fire teams as they see fit. This indicates that simulation is the priority here, with realistic platoon and squad organizations and compositions being used. Just to note, we can see in the devblog that a team is currently shown as consisting of 36 players, so we are looking at a very targeted infantry platoon shooter and not a quote-unquote platoon scale game with arbitrarily large player counts. However, while the 36 player count we can see here is enough for the 3 line squads and 1 weapon squad in a ranger platoon, that count wouldn't be sufficient to include elements like the platoon HQ or any attached enablers. So I would wait to see what we actually end up with before deciding that this game is going to be 36 players per team. And tying this organizational structure together will be a positional VoIP system and radio systems with different channels, similar to Squad, but more akin to what we have in Arma. We also know that vehicles will primarily be supporting assets for transport, and we won't see heavy combat vehicles like main battle tanks or attack helicopters. In terms of the graphics and fidelity, the game looks beautiful, and I don't think we need to worry about anything on that front. The sound environment so far sounds great, and even the suppression system shows quite a bit of restraint, and I expect it to fit within a gameplay system like we see in KC Liberation. The devs have mentioned that kit and weapon customization will be a thing after core gameplay systems have already been established, though it remains unclear to what degree we will have customization. The initial map is going to be based on the country of Malawi, which is in Southeast Africa and is going to be a 4x4 kilometer map or 16 square kilometers, which for reference is about the size of Gorodok, Manikougan, Goose Bay, or Harju in Squad, smaller than maps like Yeharivka and larger than maps like Fallujah. The devblog here didn't say anything about what kinds of gameplay loops are going to be constructed on top of these foundational mechanics, such as a respawn system, but the term dynamic direction is teased, which was previously a mod for Squad developed by the Karmika community featuring a custom game mode with a randomized objective AO on the larger map with asymmetric factions and objectives. It featured a blue 4 seeking to establish and maintain a single fob within the AO while hunting 3 Op 4 caches, while Op 4 sought to protect the caches and destroy the blue 4 fob. We don't know if this is the exact formula Bellum will follow, but Karmakut's Killcog PvP Milsim events on his YouTube channel, for example, show that this rough idea of an asymmetric conflict over weapons caches on a large map featuring raid-type operations is the tried and true game mode that he and his community use, so I would expect to see something similar in Bellum. I'll leave a link in the description to the original video describing the dynamic direction mod for you all. So why do I think Bellum is going to be different? Well, from that devblog, for the first time, we have a pretty good idea of what this game is actually going to look, play, and feel like beyond just a list of promises and good ideas. The question is, how do we know that this game is going to deliver? Well, first, based off of this devblog and the gameplay we've seen, I don't think we're looking at a product that's going to be half-baked upon release. We're already seeing a great build with beautiful visuals and solid gameplay systems, and it seems like the main work now is going to be more around constructing the game modes and associated systems on top of this foundation. So I don't see any reason to question the game developing competency of the Bellum team. For me, the question is centered around the vision. Why is this game being developed? What is the experience that they want to create? For a lot of game developers, it seems like vision has been thrown aside, or at least deprioritized in favor of chasing trends, mass appeal, or capitalizing on new sources of revenue. There's no question that game developers are ultimately running a business. It's unreasonable to think otherwise, but over the last year, I've grown my channel by focusing on creating content that emphasizes teamwork, tactics, and Milsim. True Milsim, where you're trying to solve realistic problems with solutions used by militaries today in cooperation with other like-minded players. The important thing isn't just having fun, it's about a specific experience centered around a particular philosophy of how to play Milsim. And on this topic, Karmacut has said some words. To him, one of the most important parts of Milsim is a unifying structure and culture, which is lacking in most games today. It's incredibly important for a studio to have a vision of how the game is to be played from the beginning and support that way of playing via systems, tutorials, community support at every single level as much as possible. And it doesn't surprise me that Karmacut sees this. He is, after all, a fellow Milsim player who has spent considerable time searching for, creating, and playing that very specific type of gaming experience that we seek. The software of Bellum is only one half of the game. The other half of the game that will complete the experience will be the community of players that come together to create an awesome game. If you are someone who has this preference, who's looking for a Milsim title that's well designed and well aligned in terms of vision and realism, I would venture to say that Bellum is the title to look out for. It's most definitely my most anticipated game of the future. Thanks for watching.